Granny Clampett could deceive people from the city with her rheumatism medicine and scare off intruders with her trusty shotgun while keeping the Clampett family rooted in their mountain roots. But Irene Ryan's perfect performance as the feisty Daisy Mae Moses on the Beverly Hillbillies was hiding something from everyone on set. What secret did Irene Ryan carry hide while she was one of TV's most beloved characters before she became the feisty granny on the phone? There were many ups and downs in Irene's life as she tried to become famous in the entertainment business, which was always changing. She may have made it look easy, but Irene's path to fame was anything but. She was born in El Paso, Texas, USA on October 17, 1957. Her father, James, was an Army sergeant from North Carolina, and her mother, Katie, was an Irish immigrant. Growing up in a military family had its challenges, but it also gave Irene a chance to see and do many new places and things. Her sister Anna was 17 years older than her, which made Irene feel like she was the only child. Irene's first experience performing was when she was 11 years old. She sang Pretty Baby in an amateur contest at the Valencia Theater in San Francisco and won $3, which is about $95 today. That moment planted the idea that she loved the thrill of performing and the applause from the crowd. From then on, Irene knew she wanted to entertain people. By the time she was 20, Irene had taken her first big step into show business when she married writer and comedian Tim Ryan, and they started working together as a. People called their act a dumb Dora routine, and Irene played Tim's naive partner who drove him crazy. They became known as Tim and Irene, and their act was so popular that they were cast in 11 short films between 1935 and 1937. People loved their snappy banter, and Tim's exasperated catchphrase, "Will you stop it?" was even the title of one of their movies. Vaudeville was where Irene honed her comedic timing and developed the charm that would later make Granny such a beloved character. But vaudeville wasn't meant to last, and audiences moved on to other shows. Irene and Tim had to change when they moved on to radio and starred in the Jell-O Summer Show on NBC in 1936. Their act worked perfectly in radio, where Irene's sharp voice and comedic flair brought characters to life for listeners across the country. Despite their professional success, Irene and Tim's personal relationship didn't last, and they got divorced in 1942, though Irene kept the Ryan name. It was a hard time for Irene, but she didn't let it stop her. She kept working hard at her career and kept moving forward. That same year, she joined Bob Hope's USO tours to entertain troops during World War II. Touring with Bob Hope wasn't easy, it was hard work, but it gave Irene a chance to show off her talent on a bigger stage. For 2 years, she was a regular on his radio show, solidifying her reputation as a reliable performer who could make people laugh even when things were bad. By the 1940s, she had also started acting in movies, usually in supporting roles as awkward or nervous women who added a touch of humor to the movies. Irene wasn't the lead in Eunice Johnson or Diary of a Chambermaid as Louise, but she didn't need to be. She could steal scenes, and directors liked how she could bring even the smallest characters to life. In 1954 to 1966, Irene married Harold Knox, a film production worker, but the marriage didn't last either. They got divorced in 1961, leaving Irene single and without children. While Irene had been in vaudeville, radio, movies, and steadily working in TV, she had small roles on popular shows like The Danny Thomas Show, The Real McCoy, and My Three Sons. These roles kept her in front of audiences and helped her stay in the entertainment world, but Irene still hadn't found that one big role that would make her famous. She was a familiar face, but not a star. That all changed when the Beverly Hillbillies came along. Irene had to fight for the part of Granny when she first auditioned. The casting director told her she was too young for the part because she was in her late 50s, but Granny was supposed to be Anne. Irene Green wasn't one to give up easily. She told the director, "Do I have to go home and get my gray wig and shawl to convince you that if you get anyone older to play the role, she won't be able to keep up with the pace? I know what those 7 to S schedules are like." Her determination paid off. Irene not only got the audition, but she nailed it, according to the show's creator, Paul Henning. She told a story about performing in Arkansas, where as an example of her quick wit and understanding of the character, the theater manager wouldn't open the doors early because the audience might move the seats. Despite the huge success of the Beverly Hillbillies, Irene Ryan never felt completely secure in her role as Granny. Fans loved her, and her performance was a big part of the show's popularity. But Irene couldn't get rid of the fear that her time in the role might end suddenly. She talked about this fear in an interview with the Star Gazette in 1965. "I'm the first one on the set for every scene. All my life I've been on time. I was." Irene wasn't just paranoid. Her fear came from years of working in an unstable industry, show business. From vaudeville to radio to TV and movies, Irene had seen how quickly fame and success could fade. She'd been through times when work was scarce and roles dried up, forcing her to adapt and hustle to stay afloat. Interestingly, Irene's worry about losing her role wasn't shared by the show's creators. Paul Henning, the producer and creator of the Beverly Hillbillies, saw how valuable she was right away, and even said that Granny just wouldn't have been the same without Irene's unique spark. To show his appreciation, Henning gave her a miniature gold rocking chair covered in diamonds, which was a symbol of her important role in the series' triumph. But even these gifts couldn't calm Irene's fears because her career had been unstable for years, and she was determined to keep her spot on the show. The Beverly Hillbillies never wavered. Maybe it was her fear that pushed her to give 110% to every scene. Irene once said, "After all these years, he's still writing it, and believe me, we read it the way he writes it." Directing praise to the man who had given her the chance of a lifetime in terms of money. By the time she was 30, Irene was financially stable. Irene became a millionaire after years of living in hotels when she joined the cast of the Beverly Hillbillies. In interviews, she joked about finally being able to put her feet on her own furniture, which she loved after decades of moving around. But even with her newfound stability, she still worried about her job. Irene's fear of being fired wasn't because she didn't believe in her talent, it was because she knew how the entertainment industry worked and had seen too many others get fired or replaced on a whim. Irene knew better than most how unpredictable Hollywood could be, and that kept her grounded and motivated. When the Beverly Hillbillies first aired in 1962, it was an instant hit. Families across America couldn't stop laughing at the Clampett family's antics as they traded their simple life in the Ozarks for a mansion in Beverly Hills. At the center of it all was Granny, the sassy and fiercely loyal matriarch who stole every scene she was in. But did you know that Irene Ryan was the actress who played her? When Irene first put on Granny's famous wig, she was only 59 years old. Granny, whose real name was Daisy Mae Moses, was supposed to be in her 80s. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman who made her own rheumatic pain medicine and wasn't afraid to use a shotgun if necessary. She was Jed Clampett's mother-in-law, making her the grandmother of the family. Buddy Epson, who played Jed, was only 5 years younger than Irene. Their dynamic worked perfectly on screen thanks to clever makeup, a gray wig, and Irene's great performance. No one doubted Granny's age or her stubbornness. The role of Granny wasn't originally written for Irene. Bendor B., a seasoned actress, seemed like the perfect choice for the part. But then Irene walked into the audition with her hair pulled back into a tight bun, her voice clear and commanding, and her attitude full of the sass that would make a Granny. She nailed it by the time she was done reading. Everyone in the room knew she was the granny. Even B. Bendor agreed and later took on the role of Cousin Pearl. The show's creators loved Irene's approach. Irene didn't just play Granny, she brought her to life. She could make people laugh, but she also gave the character a warm, endearing side. Granny wasn't just the grumpy old lady with a shotgun, she was a loving, protective family member who wanted the best for them, whether she was chasing raccoons for dinner or trying to convince Jed to marry a proper mountain woman. Behind the scenes, Irene worked hard to perfect the role. To make her look older, the production team used heavy makeup, adding wrinkles and shadows to her face, and she had her famous gray hairstyle. That Irene wasn't really in her 80s. The makeup artist did a great job, and Irene's acting and walking style sealed the deal. She walked with a slight hunch, used exaggerated facial expressions, and delivered her lines with the perfect mix of sass and sweetness. The Beverly Hillbillies became a huge hit, and Granny became a fan favorite. Every week, people watched to see what she would do next. One minute she'd be making possum stew, and the next she'd be arguing with Mr. Dale about their place in society. Beverly Hills Irene had perfect comedic timing and could make even the silliest situations seem real. But Granny wasn't just funny, she also had a strong sense of right and wrong and a deep love for her family. When the Clampetts moved to Beverly Hills, Granny struggled with the flashy, materialistic lifestyle of their new neighbors. She often felt out of place, but she never let it show. Instead, she stuck to her mountain roots and taught her family to stay true to themselves no matter how much money they had. Granny's mountain medicine was another funny thing about her. She thought of herself as even though some of her treatments weren't very good, like using leeches to draw blood or making her own moonshine as a cure-all, Granny's remedies always made people laugh. And even though the other characters didn't always believe her, they usually went along with her plans, which sometimes had hilarious results. One thing that ran through the show was how fiery Granny was. She wasn't afraid to say what she thought or stand up for what she believed in, whether she was fighting with Mrs. Dale or planning to marry off her granddaughter Ellie Mae. Their dynamic was part of what made the show so entertaining. Jed's calm, logical approach balanced out Granny's fiery determination, creating moments of comedy and heartwarming family connections. Her hard work paid off. Irene earned 2 Emmy nominations for her role as Granny, making her one of TV's most beloved characters. Fans couldn't get enough of her, and she became a pop culture icon. Even today, people remember Granny as one of the funniest and most lovable characters in. When the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, it was the end of an era for TV and for Irene Ryan. The show was canceled after 9 successful seasons as part of CBS's famous rural purge to attract urban audiences. The network canceled many of its rural-themed shows, including Green Acres, Mayberry RFD, and even Lassie. Pat Buttram, who played Mr. Haney on Green Acres, joked that it was the year CBS canceled everything with a tree, including Lassie. For Irene Ryan, it was Although Irene had achieved the kind of fame that most actors only dream of as Granny, fans loved her tough yet tender performance as Daisy Mae Moses, and her work earned her 2 Emmy nominations. She had always been realistic about how unpredictable show business can be. When the show ended, she didn't dwell on how it had been canceled. Instead, she turned her attention back to something she had always loved: the stage. Irene had started her career in live theater, so it made sense for her to return to it. Soon after the Beverly Hillbillies, she accepted a role in the Broadway musical Pippin, which was directed by Bob Fosse. As Berta, the eccentric grandmother, Irene's performance stole the show, even though she was only on stage for 10 minutes. Her performance of the song in that short amount of time brought down the house every night. The audience loved her so much that the applause often delayed the show. The New York Times even wrote that her performance stopped the show cold, leaving the cast waiting for the cheers to settle before continuing. At 70 years old, Irene showed no signs of slowing down. She was full of energy. She was only 52 years old, but her presence filled the room. Despite her age and years of success, she stayed humble and worked hard. After her role in Pippin, she would hang out backstage with the crew, chatting and taking in the chaos of Broadway life. Her love of performing was clear, and she loved being in the middle of it all. Her role in Pippin earned her a Tony Award nomination for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. It was another recognition of her amazing talent, adding to the legacy she had built with the Beverly Hillbillies. She didn't win the Tony, but she was proud of the nomination. In her career, Irene had once again shown that she could shine in any medium, whether it was TV, movies, or theater. Unfortunately, Irene's time on Broadway was cut short when she had a stroke during a performance of Pippin. True to her work ethic, she didn't show how bad it was until she was done with the show and immediately flew back to Los Angeles. She had a malignant brain tumor and arteriosclerosis in her heart when she died on April 26, 1973, at the age of 70. She had a net worth of about $1 million, which was a lot of money for the time. Her financial success and smart management over the years are reflected in her net worth. Even after she died, Irene's legacy continued through the Irene Ryan Acting Scholarship, which was created in her honor. The scholarship helps young actors pursue their dreams in theater and performance, which is a fitting tribute to someone who spent her life entertaining audiences and inspiring people. The Beverly Hillbillies' legacy lives on through others. The show is remembered for its humor, charm, and unforgettable characters. In 1981, CBS aired a reunion movie called Return of the Beverly Hillbillies. It was meant to capture the nostalgia of the original series, but it wasn't quite the same. Irene's absence was deeply felt, and the movie struggled to recreate the magic of the show without her. Even the show's creator, Paul Henning, admitted that the film didn't live up to. Many fans blamed the show's flaws on the 1981 Writers Guild of America strike, which stopped rewrites. However, the Beverly Hillbillies is timeless, and Irene Ryan's performance as Granny is still one of the most famous roles in sitcom history. Whether she was making trouble with her rheumatism medicine or getting into fights with Mrs. Dale, Granny was always a source of laughter and heart. Irene's performance made the character feel real tough, funny, and deeply loyal to her family.